I'm ashamed to admit I just had to look up what this rivalry is called. And
don't do that.
It's the Crosstown Shootout. I look, I'm sorry. When I think this rivalry, I'm like taken back to the days of 2 Holloway, and I'm really excited about it. Okay. Good things happen when you pay attention to this game. But excuse me, I wanted to call this the backyard brawl. This is not the backyard brawl. This is the Crosstown Shootout. Cincinnati Xavier. Cincinnati 7-0 to start this season.
Quietly.
Wes Miller's a good coach. I feel confident in that at this point. Yes. Xavier has had very high highs and very low lows. They blew out St. Mary's on a neutral. That's a team a lot of people liked coming into the season. They've now lost 3 consecutive games, including 2 to non-top 100 KenPom opponents. Oakland and Delaware are losses in their last 3. In the middle of that, sandwiched in between, they played Houston super close. So I don't know what to make of this Musketeers team. Let's start there, Brian. Is this a good basketball team or not?
On certain days, yes, and on certain days, no. Like I've gotten to the point where I think Xavier is going to be one of those ultimate played your competition type of teams, because there isn't anything they did drastically different against Houston, at least from a looking at a game planning standpoint, that they did against Oakland or Delaware. I just think that the intensity wasn't necessarily there. Defensive effort certainly was not there. But you look at their schedule, their probably 3 best performances were certainly Houston, but also against Washington on a neutral court, and at Purdue. I thought they hung tough in a way that boded well. Like we left that Purdue game thinking, Purdue won by double digits, but Xavier played about as well as they could have. Like that was kind of the top end of expectations. They hung in there, and we're in a position to threaten. Never really threatened, but we're in a position to threaten. But the defense really dropped off against Oakland and Delaware. And I think you're seeing a team that is looking for some go-to guys offensively and some consistent contributors, and a pecking order hasn't necessarily been established. And as a body language guy yourself, I think that plays into it a little bit, where there's been some letting some bad offense, bad calls, shots not going in, impact the way guys are playing elsewhere, right? And Sean Miller has talked about that in some post game, just kind of getting on guys, making sure guys are focused. They'll be focused for this game though, because this is one of the most intense, hate-filled rivalries, and I say that in a good way, in the country. And it's always a lot of fun.
Yeah, one of those rivalries that like transcends the moving parts, right? Because there are a lot of new faces in this. This is the transfer portal era where, these aren't relationships built for 4 years that were molded in a hated rivalry here. This is like guys who are now putting on this jersey for the first time and being told how intense this game is. And it will be intense, but I'm kind of curious to see how that vibe continues as both these rosters are built with a bunch of transfers. And look, Sean Miller and Wes Miller are both great coaches who are still both relatively new to this rivalry. I know Sean had it years and years and years ago, but he's back for the first time. So, second time. Last season was the first time. Anyways, you get what I'm saying. The point is, I'm much more impressed with Cincinnati than I am with Xavier. And I think you're right. Xavier's a team that plays up and down to their competition. This feels like a game they will inevitably lose very close. And once again, are we patting them on the back for losing by 4 points to an undefeated Cincinnati team? Maybe. But Cincy, I think, has some substance here. And they're very quietly undefeated because they haven't beaten anybody. But the way they've beaten the teams they have played that do have a pulse impresses me. Like Georgia Tech looks like they have a lot more to them than people might have realized. And Cincy just devoured them, beat them by 45 points. They're coming off a win by 37 points over Florida Gulf Coast. Like, for the most part, this is a team that has a lot of different guys that can beat you both offensively and defensively. I don't know. It's just a team I trust more, even though, like, individually, a lot of these players have a reputation for being guys you can't trust, right? Like CJ Frederick, his whole career has been, no, didn't work out. And now here he is at Cincy, and he looks pretty damn good.
Well, this is certainly a step up for Cincinnati. There's no doubt about that. But the teams they have played, to your point, they've beaten like a drum. Like, they've done everything you could possibly want against lesser competition. And so this is almost a chance to validate this start, right? You mentioned quiet 7-0. We don't really know how good they are. Well, this is a chance to put a stamp on it because you beat Xavier, you play well in this game. Suddenly it becomes okay, yeah, that starts for real. They're not just beating up on teams that they are significantly better than. Like there's something to this. Wes Miller was great at UNC Greensboro for a long, long time because he got his teams to play together like a team and play to a certain standard on a consistent basis, right? He pretty much maximized the talent on his roster whenever he could. And this Cincinnati team is probably the most talented roster he's ever had, including some NCAA tournament teams he had at Greensboro. It took him a little bit last year to get things going, as you would expect any coach that stepped into that situation at Cincinnati last year to do. But I think we might be a little bit ahead of schedule with the Bearcats in terms of getting that. To your point, there is no one star, like no incredible individual performance or performances that are leading this effort. It is Cincinnati playing at a high level. They will need a guy or two to step up to compete in the Big 12 where they're at now, certainly if they're going to continue to be a top 30 KenPom team. But I trust Wes Miller enough as a coach to know that you are going to get a high level from his team every time they're on the court. And you compare that with the volatility we've seen from Xavier this season. Xavier might very well win, but I have much more confidence in Cincinnati playing at the level necessary to win than I do Xavier.
So we're going to get to the prediction at the end of this, and I'm swinging violently back and forth which way I want to go. I came into this strongly believing I was leaning on one side. And the more we talk this through, I might flip. I have a couple minutes to make my decision here. I'm going to put you through some tough questions here. Which coach in a one-game, win-the-game setting do you trust more, Sean Miller or Wes Miller?
Probably going to be blasphemous to say Wes Miller. But I think I trust Wes Miller more.
Whoa.
I think I trust his team, at least currently, the current version of Sean Miller. This may be a different conversation, if we're taking the Sean Miller from 10 years ago. But I think Wes Miller, what he has proven consistently, he hasn't, had like the top end wins, but I think that's more of a thing that's coming. I think his process is incredibly consistent, and that's going to produce results at a place like Cincinnati sooner rather than later. And we're starting to see that. It feels weird to go against Sean Miller in that aspect, but I trust Wes Miller so much.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to stick with Sean. I don't feel great about it. As you can see, I'm like choking up talking about it. I need to remind myself with this team and this program, I really believe in Sean Miller. I don't believe in his roster this year, but
yes,
I have to give Sean Miller the leeway to grow this because I do feel very confident by the end of this season, the Xavier team is going to be a much more competitive unit than I would give them credit for on paper. And the results aren't there, but I do think we're seeing that. That's part of why this team has been good in their biggest games is because Sean Miller's a damn good coach who gets the most out of this group, right?
He is, and I don't take Wes Miller because Sean stinks. It's more of a reflection of how good I think Wes is, and this could be a year where everyone gets back to being on like, oh yeah, Wes Miller is one of the best at this.
Yeah. Okay. Hot seat question number 2: if you lined up every player on both of these teams and you were schoolyard picking them out for just players you want on your team, how many Xavier players are in the top 5?
I think you definitely have 2 in the top 6.
That's not top 5.
I think Claude's in there. I really like Trey Green, and this might be more of a long-term play. I really like him. I may take him 5th. I would probably definitely take him in the top 6. I think Claude is the one that you're absolutely putting in there, and then maybe personal preference elsewhere. So I'll say 1.5.
No Oliveri?
6, 7.
Okay. See, I would have Oliveri and Claude both in, but I don't feel great about Claude. That was the point I was going to go on. Like I wanted him to be this big breakout guy, and I know he has the points per game, but I just like the 3-point shot's not there. It just feels different. Like it feels like he has to stretch himself thin to try and be the guy Xavier needs in the backcourt.
Yeah, he's still a very good player, but I
Yeah.
think it's becoming more clear he can't be the guy, the Soleil Boom of last year, right? And that's okay, except for the fact that there is nobody else to be the Soleil Boom guy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I noticed we both didn't pick Davion McKnight, which just gonna leave that there. I haven't loved what I've seen from him. Okay, to end with some numbers and then we give the prediction. Xavier has not lost at the Cintas Center in this game since 2001. They've won 9 straight against Cincinnati in their home arena. I was 8 years old the last time that Cincy beat them here. All in all, Xavier has won 8 of the last 10 in this rivalry, going all the way back to 2013. So trend. I mean, Xavier's been the better program. That shouldn't surprise us a ton, but maybe a little mystique, maybe a little voodoo in this building. Ken Palm has Xavier as a 1-point favorite at home against Cincy. What's your pick, Brian?
I don't put as much stock into historical numbers like that when there are new coaches on both sides, and we mentioned the number of transfers that are in this game, guys who are not and have not been as attached to this rivalry. Because of that, I view this as more of a one-off kind of game where some of that impacts from a fan standpoint, and obviously playing the Cintas Center is one of the toughest places to play in the country. But Cincinnati has a better roster, and I think the coaching standpoint is even or relatively close to even. So that with a better roster, a team that's playing better right now, a team that can make a real nationwide statement with a win, I think Cincinnati wins. It's a close game. These games always seem to be. I'm going to go with the Bearcats.
It would be their biggest win yet. It would be a statement on behalf of where this team is headed and that they should be a force to be reckoned with. As people forget, this is a Big 12 team now. Everybody's hyping up BYU's first year in the Big 12. Like, don't forget Cincy's sitting here undefeated too. I've swung. I came into this saying I'm picking Cincy no matter what. I think they're a good team, and I don't think Xavier is. I've completely swung on this. Here's why. I don't necessarily believe it's just that Xavier plays up to their competition or down to their competition. I think it's that Xavier gets up for big games. And I don't even know if this has to be a play up to their competition level. Obviously, we did the top 5, and there's a lot of Cincy guys we would put in there. But I think this is more so like when there's a game to get excited about, Xavier shows up. Plus the mystique of being at home. Plus Cincinnati realizing they're playing somebody with a pulse for the first time this season. And we haven't even added this element. I think you can make the argument Xavier comes into this game completely desperate. Like if they fall to 4-6 with a loss at home to Cincinnati here, that's basically stick a fork in them. Like they're going to play in the Big East where they're going to lose 8 to 10 games. So either you win this game and take care of business against the cupcakes that are left on the non-con, or your season's essentially over before we're halfway through December, where Cincinnati is much more in like, we're fine. We're okay. Hope we can win this one. Like, I think we see the desperation come together for Xavier. Sean Miller masterclass. Give me the Musketeers.
I think that's fair. There's something to be said for the effort Xavier should put forward. Right. Let's get this thing back on the right track. We are better than this in a game that's already going to have incredibly high emotions. Right. I just think Cincinnati's ready to meet them, there.
Over under 0.5 technicals. And if it's the over, who's it on?
Sean Miller. Come on.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you nailed that. I'm glad we could agree on something. That's Brian Rauf from Heat Check CBB on GregWaddell Sleepers Media. Previews and recaps every big game of the college basketball season on the Sleepers Media YouTube channel. Make sure you tune in for the recap after this one's over this weekend.